What is going on, guys? Judo Sloth here, and welcome to a special Clash of Clans video. As you can see, we have a special guest with me. This is Darian from Supercell. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this interview with me. Why don't you quickly give yourself a bit of an introduction for any of my viewers that don't know who you are, exactly who you are and what you do.
Hi. Well, first, thanks for having me on. I'm Darian. I'm the community manager for Clash of Clans. So I'm responsible for kind of being the voice of communication on what goes on between the development and the player base. So hopefully, since this week we had a big update, wanted to have a chance to be able to discuss kind of some of the thought processes that went into some of the content that we released this week.
Oh yes, and thank you again. Very privileged to have you on the channel. Mainly we're going to discuss the balance changes that were implemented in this video. I know you did implement the clan games, which I have thoroughly enjoyed. I think the feedback is massively positive from what I see, apart from the clouding issue, but that's just everyone online at the same time. But again, we're going to focus on the balance changes for this one, and why don't we just kick straight into it? You mentioned in the blog post that there is a barrier and a drop in success rate between Town Hall 9, Town Hall 10 and 11. Are you able to expand on that a little bit and just give us a bit of an idea as to where this shift in balance kind of initially came from?
Okay, so going through Town Halls 1 through 9, one of the only, at least major changes that goes in is, at Town Hall 9 are the crossbows. And when you get to Town Hall 10, you've got the Inferno Towers, and at Town Hall 11, you've got the Eagle Artillery. So when you go from 9 to 10, there is a massive paradigm shift in how defenses function. For the most part, everything is pretty much direct damage all the way through Town Hall 9, where at Town Hall 10, with the Inferno Towers, you had this new mechanic of, the Inferno Towers of preventing healing from happening as you're taking damage. And then with the Eagle Artillery, you've got just massive amounts of damage being dropped on a target, especially against golems. But with the increase in number of walls and additional defenses, increased clan castle capacity, the step from 9 to 10, when we see in terms of success rates of attacks versus defense, rapidly drops off from 9 to 10. So we saw in Town Hall 9s, the average number of 3-star attacks, I wanted to say range anywhere from about 40 to 60% chance. And in clan wars, we're talking about, fresh, non-scouted base, which is a direct, fresh 3-star attack. You're talking about 40, maybe 60% chance on average. And I think within clan wars, that number is hovers around the 40%. When you get to Town Hall 10, that number plummets down to about 20% and gets even lower in clan wars.
Yeah.
And then when you get to Town Hall 11s, we've seen single-digit 3-star success rates. That is a massive drop-off. And from a player perspective, even not in clan wars, when you're playing through a game, a challenge is good, but you want to have some success from that challenge. You don't want to constantly be beaten down to the ground with no chance of success.
Yeah.
So we wanted to take a look at that.
Absolutely. So that was the whole thought process of bringing in these changes. Obviously, you kind of touched upon the statistics and evidence you looked upon in order to implement these changes. What kind of testing and things did you do at the same time?
So we had a plan. The initial idea was, what could we do to motivate players to want to keep playing and upgrading and not just become, as we kind of called it, career Town Hall 9s. We wanted to motivate players to, there's all this cool stuff in Town Hall 10 and 11, but it gets a little scary. Even me, when I'm doing an attack, if I see a Town Hall 11, there's a lot of times I'll just hit next, just because I don't want to go through the hassle of all right, am I just going to get a 1-star this time? It's frustrating and it's daunting. So we wanted to kind of lower that barrier of entry. We wanted to motivate people all right, this is a challenge I think I can do, and want them to take that risk. So how we went into strategizing it is, increasing purely defense of Town Hall 10s and 11s, that would achieve the opposite effect because we wanted to make attacks more successful. And given that how many level increases we've done for Town Hall 11s over the past 12 months, we didn't think just simply adding troop level was the right decision, because the defenses are still one of the major obstacles that are preventing people from achieving those 3-star victories. So we had to look at what parts of the defense are causing the most headache at those town hall levels. With Inferno Towers, it was the preventing from healing. Now, the interesting thing is a large number of the player base didn't actually know that it prevents healing. That was a surprising thing we found out. Now, a lot of the people on the forums and the community, people who play competitively, they know that mechanic is there.
Yeah.
Because it is a well-known feature of that defense. But there's a very large number of the player base, and I'm kind of reluctant to share that percentage because it's really high, didn't know that, Inferno Towers prevented healing. So given that a lot of people didn't know that was there, we played with, what happens if we remove it?
Yeah,
And
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I can definitely relate to that. I have a lot of friends that just play casually, and you see them all the time trying to heal through the Infernos, and is a bit more, you're a bit heavier involved in the game. That mechanic, and I was surprised to see that some people didn't realize it was just for the, any healing effect. Some people thought it was healers and not the heal spell, and vice versa, and that quite shocked me that there were players more heavily involved that didn't realize that as well. But I guess it's getting that correct balance, because the people that do play it more deeply in war, that just kind of takes things. I mean, some people would say that is what made Town Hall 10, was that powerful Inferno Tower, and we've kind of lowered it down a bit. What would you say to them people?
So here's the thing. It doesn't invalidate their skill as competitive players. They're still good players. And by increasing the number of people that enter the higher leagues or higher town hall levels or higher leagues, it doesn't make those new players easy I win button players.
Yeah.
It just gives the good players more targets to attack. So again, this is not a replacement for skill. It doesn't turn the game instantly into casual mode, or make everybody get instantly 3-star wins where all wars are going to be draws. There's no replacement for skill in this. We actually play tested this with some. We actually had a few of the top clans that are under NDA that they weren't allowed to discuss what they were doing with us, along with our YouTubers, mods. We actually had them. We were doing ongoing wars, constantly play testing this, and a lot of this feedback came from these top players on what needed to be balanced in this. So we got actual input from top players in the world on whether it was broken, not broken, and it was because of them that resulted in the minor housing space increase. It was due to their feedback. Yeah. We weren't going to increase the minor headcount or the housing space, but it came from these players. We need to increase this because miners are going to be way too powerful if Inferno is going to be healed through.
Yeah,
so there was a lot of input.
Yeah, I think that's important to note that, this wasn't something you just plucked out of the sky and thought, let's implement this. There was a decent amount of testing that went into the back of this, and
yes.
I have to say as well that I didn't get a Town Hall 10v10 triple when I was testing this either. But again, I'm not in that kind of top league that you're talking about, them professional players, I guess. Does it close the barrier for that? In terms of the wars will be tighter in them leagues, do you think? If we're making things easier to succeed, if you get what I mean?
I think it'll make it more exciting.
Yeah.
For example, I'm going to use, let's say, in a lot of the live streams that we do that are, tournament based, especially, for example, ones that are main village oriented, for like the Reddit versus forums or even the CWL stuff. If things go wrong early on, it becomes very one-sided very quickly, and it becomes very obvious who's going to win. But when you have the opportunity to perform a lot better, you have the chance for a lot more exciting matches. And we want these matches to become, all the way to the end, nail biters, where it becomes just who makes those little mistakes that causes the loss. Now, that's from a tournament perspective. From the player perspective, if you watch a professional sport, let's say I'm going to use American basketball, I may never be as good as LeBron James or Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
I may be able to dunk every now and then, but I'm never going to be able to play at their level. But I still enjoy watching them play. I still live vicariously through it. I enjoy the sport still, but I know I'm never going to be at that level.
Yeah.
So if, the opportunity to play at a higher level came up, of course I'm going to want to play. Even though I recognize I'm never going to be that good, I at least still have a chance to live part of that dream vicariously and kind of contribute to it. So it is kind of a rough analogy, and it's kind of a poor one. But by allowing players more access to Town Hall 11 and Town Hall 10 content, you kind of create a larger pool of a player base that, it makes clans more active at that higher level. You have a higher pool of people at those higher leagues. You kind of give greater access to a wider range. And I think for a game that requires a population, that's all around a good thing.
Yeah. No, I can see exactly where you're coming from with that, because I certainly would, I've played Clash of Clans for, 4-5 years, like a long time. And I think I've got to know the game very well, but so on a scale of things, you would think that I would be, an advanced player, but compared to the people in the CWL, there's a marginal difference there. Would I class myself as an average player though across the entire scale of things? I would certainly hope, the amount of time and effort that I've put in, that I was certainly quite a long way above an average player. Mm-hmm. So I guess it is trying to get that balance, which a lot of people, I guess it's a tough challenge for you, put it that way.
But again, this is making these balance changes. One, we're going to be introducing new content throughout the next coming year. Yeah. 2018 is going to be a massively banner year for Clash of Clans, and largely for the main village. The clan games were the start of it, and just kind of sidetrack, we're going to be doing clan leaderboards and clan competitions for the clan games, and we've got some new content coming out as well. So at one point, I believe it was Town Hall 8 was the highest Town Hall available in the game.
Yeah.
Early on in the game. So when Town Hall 9 was introduced, that didn't invalidate anybody who had maxed out at Town Hall 8. Then they introduced Town Hall 9. That didn't invalidate all the work they did prior. All it did was just provide new content. And all we're doing here is just, allowing people to access more of that content. So for when we do add more content later on, it's not just a tiny elite pool that it's catering to. Yeah. For example, and I'm going to use a hypothetical here. If we wanted to introduce Town Hall 12, wouldn't it be better that if Town Hall 12 was accessible to a higher number of people who already went through Town Hall 10 and 11 because we made that barrier of entry lower? Or would it be better to keep that Town Hall 10 and 11 super elite where only the strongest players can aspire to reach those levels, so only a smaller amount can get to Town Hall 12? So I think from my perspective, I'm not CWL quality, but I would still love to play in a hypothetical Town Hall 12. Yeah. But if it's too hard to get there, that's a huge demotivator for me.
Yeah, but I think there's certainly a difference between the balance of competitive war and progression through the game. Like, I completely understand, someone starting the game now, I'm, like I said, 4 or 5 years into the game. How do they start a game and think, I'm never going to get to Town Hall 11, or like you said, if Town Hall 12 gets introduced? There's got to be, that incentive for new players, I guess, to be able to progress. But certainly there's a difference there between progression in the game and balance of war and attacks.
Right.
So it's certainly a tough one to get all of that together.
That was kind of the mentality behind why we just didn't increase offense for Town Hall 9 and 10s. So by lowering the defense, it kind of, instead of shifting the game higher to a higher level, we kind of broadened the mid-range a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard. I have the image in my head of what I'm trying to say. It's kind of hard to explain. But this way, it doesn't only affect the top players, or it doesn't only affect the new players. This way, there's an effect all across the board that everybody's kind of affected evenly, whether you're a top player or a low player. Now, what effect this is going to have on matchmaking and clan wars, we wanted to see where the dust kind of settles before this will allow us to make much more pinpoint accurate changes after we see how it's kind of shifted in the matchmaking as well. Rather than just making changes and to weights ahead of time, we wanted to see where everything kind of fell first.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting to note as well. You know, encouraging people to move up the town hall levels, that's going to have a direct impact on matchmaking, on clouds at, you know, that higher level. A lot of these things that are a bit of an issue will hopefully be helped along their way a little bit with these changes as well. And I must admit, you know, I've seen firsthand a lot of my friends that, again, they're very casual in the game. They didn't know about the Inferno heal, that they got to Town Hall 10 and quit. I've seen it. Because they couldn't get that success, and they didn't necessarily want to go spending hours on end trying to improve. So you don't want to discourage them players, but like you said, against top clans, they still wouldn't. It's not like they'd be pulling out 3 stars all the time. They might just, you know, not be failing as much. The top players will still shine. I'm quite confident of that.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that part of the other drop-off, and this is kind of a multi-pronged approach to fixing it, it's not just the difficulty that we wanted to balance. We were looking at, you know, what's keeping players from actually playing, and the exponential growth of the upgrade times is another huge barrier. And we wanted to make sure that players were kind of getting some extra value from that, which is where the magic items come from. So the magic items that can instantly upgrade are complete upgrades, and there's going to be a lot more magic items to come.
Yeah.
But at least, you know, we didn't want to instantly flip the game on its head by saying, you know, all right, you know, royal heroes can now be used while upgrading. We're not ready to go there just yet. It's something that is on the table, but with the magic items, it's a good compromise that, you know, you don't have to wait the 14 days for your barbs to finish upgrading, or the 7 days for your archer queen to finish upgrading.
Yeah.
If you won the magic item from the clan games, you can now do it. So no, not only does that help you upgrade faster, but it gets you back into the game a lot faster too, without waiting, you know, sitting around for 2 weeks waiting for something to upgrade.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very smart angle to come at the game at, because it gives people, like you said, what they want. If they've got that, they can upgrade their hero and get straight back into war, but it's also just a different dynamic. It makes things a bit more exciting, and I agree. I think it was a very well-planned approach to come at things like that. You know, so you kind of touched upon there about the career-driven Town Hall 9s and how there's that drop-off rate in terms of upgrading. Do you think some people, if they don't feel the Inferno Tower is as strong, do you think that will discourage players from upgrading? Or do you think, you know, the casual player would just see it as a new defense they're going to upgrade anyway?
It depends on, I guess, the kind of clan they're in and what they're playing for. For me, as someone who likes to see new content, upgrading to Town Hall 10 was a huge accomplishment because I couldn't wait to get new toys to play with, and those new toys were the Inferno Towers and an extra crossbow. We're looking at the damage levels on it, so I think, you know, they're still effective, especially if you set them to single target. The multi-target. What's that?
I was just about to say that. There seems to be a notable difference now between single and multi and their effectiveness.
Oh yeah. We're looking at the damage levels of the multi attack, whether it will discourage or encourage people. I think that's going to depend on their base design. I think what it'll do is, especially as more people move into Town Hall 10 and 11, at least I'm hoping that it'll encourage people to really think about their base design now that they're at these higher levels, looking at new attack strategies, defense strategies, especially since, you know, a lot of times what Town Hall 1 through 9 can be a lot of, you know, spray and pray strategies.
Yeah.
And it's when you get to really Town Hall 9, 10, and 11 is when you need those surgical multi-staged attacks to really get an effective attack in. So we didn't want to completely destroy that type of strategy. So I'm hoping this will at least allow players to really start considering the more strategic nature of this game, rather than just dropping troops and just kind of hoping for the best.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that literally just popped into my head as you were saying that was a lot of people didn't know that the Inferno healed. I'm sure people probably know the difference between the single scaling up and the multi, but how about we could have the multi scale up, but obviously at a lot of a slower rate than the single. So the single, you'd still get that effect of, taking out golems or tanks or anything like that, but the multi could scale up at a slower rate to try and stop them mass armies as much.
I think we want to see where, again, going back to seeing where the dust settles.
Yeah.
We're looking at the numbers as this happens. As you know, we didn't just, pluck a lot of these balance changes out of the air and just arbitrarily assign, like, let's just do this for no reason. But balance in any kind of game, when you have these many factors to consider, it's an ongoing thing. I mean, we've been making changes to the game over just significant changes over the last 12 months with, new troop levels, new wall levels, additional wall upgrades for Town Hall 11s. So when we make, this is probably one of the biggest balance changes we've made to the game in a while, if not ever. So definitely. I think it'll require some observation time to see, what the end results are. We got a lot of data from watching the play testing, but nothing compares to seeing the results of a live environment where you're seeing millions of people playing simultaneously, getting feedback from the community and the forums and Facebook and Reddit, and just, we need that input. Then that'll help us inform on what we need to make changes to next.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think obviously that was one of the questions I was going to kind of get to, but if there's one thing that I've learned from playing Supercell games, it's that you guys take balance very seriously, and we've seen it before where, you've brought things in and then, you've had to tweak it along the way. Nothing's going to be perfect when it first comes out. It is really just keeping on top of it, and I don't need to say that you guys will be monitoring this very carefully. You've said this is the biggest balance change that you've made, certainly that I can think of, so I can be sure that you guys will be watching it very carefully, and people can be assured of that as well.
And we're not afraid to say, if we found something that we made in an error, we're not afraid to say that we did. Look at the AI changes that we did a couple months back. We realized that was a horrible implementation, didn't accomplish what we were trying to do, and we reverted it. So we're keeping an eye on things. If we feel that the Inferno Tower multi needs more damage output, we'll increase it. Yeah,
and revert it back if absolutely necessary, or obviously.
If that's an extreme case, obviously we don't want to revert anything if we don't have to. So far, even though it's only been 48 hours, the majority of the feedback we're seeing on the balance changes is positive. So I'm hoping that trend will continue. But if we do see some data-driven problems that we can actually put a pinpoint finger on, like, okay, that's causing this issue to tie to this, and maybe we need to increase this damage here. Well, we'll make those changes and we'll make sure to communicate it.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, there's different angles to come at things. It's not necessarily a case of just, you're trying to bring all of these changes in. Was it a case of you had to bring them all in together to see the effect, or do you think you could have somewhat, brought them in slowly?
I think, given that this was our winter content update, where traditionally we've kind of brought in a lot of big things, I think drawing out those changes over time would not have had the same net positive effect. Like, if we make one change here and then a following month later we do this other change, we don't really. It's kind of hard to see what the net result is of all these changes at once until you get that last change in. And on top of that, since we're working on the balance, we might as well get in all in at the same time and not draw it out over weeks or months. Yeah,
and that makes sense because, like you said, you're monitoring it, you can tweak things, and that'll be the idea, is to get things in line. So obviously we've touched upon the Inferno quite a lot there. There was quite a significant change to Town Hall 11 as well. The heroes went up to level 50, you got the brand new army camps. Was that all part of that career progression you talked about?
The army camps and the hero levels was largely for Town Hall 11 versus Town Hall 11s. We wanted to increase the success, as I mentioned earlier, that Town Hall 11 versus Town Hall 11 3 stars dropped significantly compared to even Town Hall 10 versus Town Hall 10. And adding the hero levels and also the army camps was to increase that success ratio. So it was largely for the Town Hall 11s.
Yeah, Okay. And how do you think that goes in line with kind of so-called dip attacks to Town Hall 10? Because I remember when Town Hall 11 was implemented, I'm pretty sure it was an interview with Jonas who was talking about the Warden's ability and how, well, he was obviously quite precarious about it because this was when it was first getting talked about. But he was talking about how it would have something to help with the Inferno Towers, basically. That seems to be, I'm not saying the Warden's ability is useless, because it certainly is not, but are there any plans for the Warden or anything like that? Or are you looking at the statistics of dip attacks and success rates as well? I know that's a couple of questions in one.
One of the things that we'd like to do is make it much more exciting for people to attack their own Town Hall level. So, but dipping is a part of Clan Wars. Part of it is, because it's easy, it's better to get dip to get those extra points, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it's one of those things that are a necessary evil to do in order to ensure you're maximizing number of points that you're getting in a clan war.
Yeah.
But is it exciting to watch an adult beat up a little kid, or is it more exciting to watch two adults beat up each other? If you're watching an MMA fight, you don't want to watch, some, beefy muscled guy beat up a 6-year-old kid. You'd rather watch him beat up another beefy muscular guy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you want the fights as fair as possible. And unfortunately, just because of the nature of the point system, that dipping is, again, like I said, one of those necessary evils when you try to maximize and you want to save your best attacks from when you can guarantee a successful win. So by increasing the success rate of 3 stars for Town Hall 10s and 11s, it would be nice as a side effect to see Town Hall 11s attacking Town Hall 11s become a much more viable choice to make those events much more exciting and attract much more enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I actually had that conversation with one of my friends last night. Actually, we were discussing how the dip attacks are just a lot easier now. There have been some of them going on in the background there of the video, but then we kind of got onto the conversation of what you just said, in that why would you dip if the Town Hall 10s can take the Town Hall 10 victories? You would then see 11v11s naturally. So actually, thinking a little bit deeper about it, it makes perfect sense to me.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not going to eliminate dipping entirely either. But if a Town Hall 11 easily beats a Town Hall 10 when it dips, it's not going to really change that if we make Town Hall 11s a little bit stronger. Is it really going to change it all that much?
It's not. And the thing is, if you're trying to get the 10v10s in alignment, you wouldn't want to dip. It's right. Kind of the same as right now. You don't want a 10 to dip against a 9 because you're wasting a Town Hall 10 attack. You want the 9s to clear the 9s. So essentially, we're kind of shifting up the barrier there.
It's a good way of saying it, shifting up.
Yeah, and exactly like what you're saying, with the introduction, of new town halls potentially in the future, we want to make sure that progression is continually being made. Right. So actually thinking a little deeper, and when we get to see more of the statistics, it's not just a case of, dips are easy now. It's a sense of, why would you dip? You're going to need your 11 attacks to try and take out the 11s. So when I've thought about it a bit more, I think it's great. I do. I think it's a great idea.
Good.
So one thing you mentioned as well, we'll start kind of wrapping things up. I do appreciate your time. One thing you mentioned in, I think it was the developer interview, was that the Dark Elixir troops you felt needed a bit of a boost. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I'm trying to remember, when did I say this? Do you remember what I said it was in the boost regarding?
I think it was just in terms of the Dark Elixir troops. You wanted to make them a bit stronger. If I recall correctly, I should have maybe watched that back.
Ano said he wanted to. Ano was the design. He's the designer for Clash of Clans, and if I remember the quote correctly, he wanted Dark Elixir troops to be more powerful right out the gates.
Okay, yeah, that was it.
And it wasn't referring just to heroes. it was referring to Dark Elixir troops in general, like Golem, Lava Hound, which is why their stats were changed a little bit for Town Hall 9s and 10s, I believe, is what their
Yeah, it was
stats.
the lower levels.
Kind of getting a little more bang for your buck. Their hit points were increased to make them a little more, I guess, durable is the right word. So with the decrease in defense of Town Hall 10s and 11s, and with the buffing of those tanking troops, you basically have the ability to withstand a lot more damage when you're at those Town Hall levels.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense as well.
And we also decreased the cost of the heroes, or at least for the Archer Queen and the Barb King for the upgrade cost, just to make sure people can get them upgraded much more quickly.
Yeah, I noticed, right, as my Queen went to 45 the night before the update.
Nice. Well, nice until you guys saw the new cost.
Yeah. So just kind of moving back there, we talked about dip attacks, but also previously there have been kind of scout attacks where the 9s would attack up to the 10s would attack, well, obviously the 10s would attack the 11s for the 2-star. What do you feel, I know you'd mentioned one of the statistics you'd looked at, along with obviously a bunch of other things, was 9v10s, 10v11s, and there have been images circulating of 9s, 3-star, and 10s. What do you guys make of that?
It happens. I mean, just by statistics, you're going to come across a Town Hall 10 that, either is suboptimal, or you have a Town Hall 9 attacker who is exceptionally skilled, who happen to, I don't want to say it's always because the stars align perfectly, but there's a degree of skill. There's a certain degree of randomness that you happen to click on the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
I know a lot of these skilled players, they know exactly how the AI is going to behave within certain pixels or certain tiles. So just knowing how those troops and units are going to behave by doing certain actions, understanding that cause and effect. I mean, if you've got someone who's that good at Clash of Clans strategy, it's not unheard of. That you're going to get a 3-star, especially in a fresh clan war. So
obviously you'd think that was incredibly rare though, right? You're talking about pro players here. This isn't something but 9v10 could be, yeah, we've seen it before, but it was literally on a very, very rare case.
Right.
You think that'll be upped and be viable to be?
I hope so. I would like to see a higher success rate. One of the things that we saw, one of the clutch moments in the CWL3 finals that we saw was, his name is completely escaping me, but it was a 10v10. It was a fresh base, and he tripled it. Like that, a fresh base being tripled in 10v10, that is insane. And I really wish it got a lot more of the credit that it was due as just the momentous occasion that it was, because the crowd went nuts on our end. We were just completely, utterly shocked that that happened, especially in a live attack. Does that mean that this is going to become more frequent? I mean, it's not going to be every single attack is going to be a 3-star on a fresh base. That's not going to happen. We didn't completely make everything one hit point. Everything's just going to be easy to steamroll.
Yeah.
Far from it. It's still going to require a degree of skill to 3-star your same level base at 10v10 or 11v11, or even a 9v10 or 10v11. It's still going to require a decent amount of skill to 3-star it, especially on a fresh, unscouted base. So the idea, we're not turning into casual mode where everything's become easier and instant wins, where like I said, all wars are going to be draw.
Yeah.
It does become a little bit the higher success rate, but it's still going to require players to be skillful to do it.
Absolutely. Like I said, when I was testing, I didn't get a Town Hall 10v10 triple, and we can tweak things. You've already said you're going to monitor it carefully and tweak things as needed. I think wrapping things up, we've already mentioned, all of the different changes that we've gone over that has been implemented as part of the winter update. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to, what we've discussed necessarily?
Just that this is the start. The balance changes it was something I think that's been needed for a while. One of the biggest complaints that I saw, at least reading the forums, was how hard it was for 11s to consistently and reliably get 3 stars. And same thing with Town Hall 10s. And I think this is a much needed boost to morale and motivation to really get players re-engaged and re-involved in it, because we've got a lot of cool stuff coming out this year. And the clan games are just the start of it. So like I said, 2018 is going to be a huge, massive banner year. We're shaking up a lot of things that we were held kind of as like pillars of convention on Clash of Clans that we would never touch. And we're shaking a lot of those things up.
I'm glad to hear it. That sounds incredibly exciting. I know that everyone will be, hyped for it, especially with the clan games. And like you said, 11v11 is still not an easy thing. We had in our war post update, we had one 11v11 triple. Granted, they haven't upgraded their heroes and things, so I think that's probably important to note as well. Anyone watching that, yes, you're monitoring the data, but this will take some time to, as people slowly move up, to see that desired effect. It's not like you're going to monitor for a week and then just make radical changes. This is something that is going to take a bit of a process, but I think that's what a lot of people forget, is that you guys have access to all of the statistics and data that, really tell the story at the end of the day.
And we're not done making matchmaking changes either. It's not like all this was just for this and we're stopping. We're constantly monitoring it. We're constantly making changes. And so when the next matchmaking change goes into place, as I've been doing for the last few months, I'll make sure everybody knows what's coming down the pipeline.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And thank you so much for expanding a little bit and the kind of clarity on things. It's been a great privilege having you on the channel.
Thank you.
Thank you once again. Awesome. So guys, if you have any other comments on the balance changes, make sure to drop them down below, and make sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. But until next time, peace out.